Hi, today we are going to read from Front Desk by Kelly Yang, Chapter 48. Chapter 48 begins on page 202. Uncle Zhang had borrowed $500 from some loan sharks when he first came to America, just as Uncle Ming had. It wasn't even for myself. It was for Mom back home. She was very sick, and I thought, he could barely finish. You thought maybe if you paid for an expensive doctor, she might get better, my dad said, glancing at my mom. My mom slipped her hand into his. Uncle Zhang shook his head. It wasn't even that. She had stage 4 cancer. It had already spread. There was nothing they could do, he said. So then... His eyes grew moist, his voice shaky. I borrowed the money so she could die knowing her only son was okay out there. That I had made it in America instead of the loser. Uncle Zhang started crying. Listen to me. You're not a loser, my dad said. None of us knew it was going to be like this. I couldn't even say goodbye. Uncle Zhang bit down on his lower lip. I was afraid if I called her, she'd hear it in my voice how much I was struggling, so I refused. No matter how many times she asked for me in the end, I refused to get on the phone with her. My mom put a hand on Uncle Zhang's shoulder. None of us said a word. I sat very still, thinking about my own secrets that I was keeping from my parents. My missing pencil, the C- lurking in my closet. I thought about my parents and how they almost never wanted to call or write to my grandparents or Shen's family. And if we called them, my mother always rushed to get off the phone. Either that or she'd put on the same voice she used at Macy's when she said, "Just looking." As the hazy sky turned into night, my parents, Uncle Zhang, and I gazed out the window, thinking of all the things we wanted to say to our parents, but couldn't. In the middle of the night, I got out of bed and went over to my mom and dad's bed. My dad was snoring peacefully. I hesitated for just a second. He got so little sleep, my dad, before shaking him awake. "Dad?" I whispered. "Huh? Did a customer come?" he asked, jerking his eyes open and sitting up. "I'll be right there." "No, Dad, it's just me," I said. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about Uncle Zhang and his passport." "I know," my dad sighed. "Me too." "What's he going to do?" "I don't know, honey," my dad said. "Hopefully he can meet someone soon who can help him." "Like who?" "A lawyer, maybe," my dad said. "What can a lawyer do for him?" I asked. My dad thought about it. "A lawyer will be able to help to tell his employer what's what," he said. "Well, why can't we tell people what's what?" I asked him. He chuckled. "We can, sweetheart, but nobody's going to listen to us," he said. That's not true, I thought. Hank's new employer, he listened. My dad rolled back on his side. "There is nothing you can do, sweetheart," he said. "Now try to get some sleep." I went back to my room, but I didn't get some sleep. Instead, I pulled out a piece of paper from my drawer and Mrs. T's big old dictionary thesaurus, which I still had from when I wrote Hank's letter. With a flashlight, I started writing. Dear Employer, I am writing to you about your employee, Zhang Ziling. Mr. Zhang has informed me that you are in possession of his passport and ID. It is illegal to confiscate someone's passport and ID. I request your immediate return of Mr. Zhang's passport and ID. Failure to do so will result in serious consequences. I will be following up with Mr. Zhang to see if you have returned his passport and ID. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely, Mia Tang, lawyer. I worked on the letter all night long, making sure the tone, punctuation, and syntax was all right. I read it over 5 times, and when I was pretty sure I had it corrected, all the grammatical mistakes, I copied it onto a clean sheet of white paper. Before I left for school, I handed Uncle Zhang the letter. "This is for you," I told him. "I don't know if it'll work, but it's worth a shot." I watched as his eyes danced across my writing. "You wrote this?" he asked. "Well, I had a thesaurus," I said. "Mia, this is incredible," he said. I blushed. "I hope it works for you, Uncle Zhang," I said, hugging him. "Me too," he said, clutching the letter. "Me too." And that's the end of chapter 48.